Hi there, welcome to Sunday's IndyCar. I'm Gordon Ross. I've only got a couple of subjects to talk to you about today. The first one is the reluctant Tory leader. Talking about Boris Johnson here, just in case you don't catch my drift. And the other topic later today is the Mela, the annual Indian festival of music, dance and food that's held every year at Kelvingove. So I'll come back to that later on. This morning there's been an awful lot of news about polls that have been carried out recently, asking people in England and in Scotland how they feel about Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister, as everybody seems to expect that he's going to become the Prime Minister. And the results, I guess, are not really unexpected. In Scotland, it seemed that the number of people who would vote for independence if Boris Johnson becomes Prime Minister has shot up from something like 63% to 73%. So a jump of 10%, desperate to get out of the UK if Boris Johnson is put in charge. Contrast that, well, I'd say contrast that, compare that with what English voters think. And it seems that English voters think something similar, that if Boris Johnson becomes the Prime Minister, that they would be quite happy to allow Scotland to vote to leave the UK. In fact, they would prefer that to no Brexit at all. And they want it. They want Boris Johnson to lead them to Brexit. And if that means Scotland leaving, then that's acceptable to the vast majority of Tory voters in England. It's fine to me. Right, so we've got a situation where the end result is almost a foregone conclusion. Brexit happens with Boris Johnson in charge, Scotland leaves the UK. Seems simple enough. The problem is that Boris Johnson, I mean, if you watch everything that he does and what he's said, what he's not said, when he's appeared and when he's not appeared, he is the most reluctant candidate to become a Tory leader that I've ever seen. I mean, first of all, he doesn't show up, he doesn't do interviews, he doesn't come out of his house for days on end, he dodges the media. When he does finally take part in any kind of debate, it's very short, that's very light on any kind of detail, and he seems genuinely out of his depth. Contrasting that a little bit with Jeremy Hunt, who appeared, in his shirt sleeves a la Tony Blair, with his sleeves rolled up trying to look businesslike. Despite Jeremy Hunt not being a fantastically bright or particularly talented politician, he makes Boris Johnson look like the village idiot by comparison. And wondering actually whether the whole of the Conservative Party now is kind of ganging up to try and undermine Boris, or whether he's actually trying to undermine himself. You'll have heard the stories about a big loud row that he had with his Bidey in his flat in London, where apparently crockery was thrown and there was a lot of shouting and swearing, and he was told to get out and to get off me and a lot of other things. And the neighbours obviously were understandably scared that somebody might get hurt, called the police. And at the end of the day, the two occupants of the flat, Boris and his girlfriend, decided that things were okay now and the police could go home. And then the neighbour sells the story to The Guardian, which is not exactly an impartial paper when it comes to the Conservative Party. All of these things seem to be pushing Boris Johnson further and further away from the leadership of the Tory Party. It's almost as if there's a campaign going on within both the Conservative Party and with Boris Johnson himself to make himself as unpalatable as possible to the people who are likely to be voting. And remember, that's not you and me, that is Tory voters who are mostly over the age of 57. The question really is, does anybody in the Tory party really want to be the leader at the moment? I mean, Boris Johnson, I think, would be probably the most, what should we say? It would be justice if Boris Johnson was forced to lead the UK out of the EU and into a no-deal Brexit, because it's largely, to a very large extent, of his making that the country is in a situation in the first place. It would be poetic justice if the man who wants power but doesn't want to get the blame for causing Brexit was to become the most powerful man who can lead us to Brexit and suffer the ignominy of being the man who not only led England out of the European Union but also forced Scotland and maybe Northern Ireland to leave the UK. leaving only England and Wales left to bear the brunt of whatever the scorched earth policy was of the Tory party in the past, because they've got very little in the way of exporting businesses with which to make any kind of foreign capital, which means that England really has got to become a massive tax haven. And everybody in England and Wales will have to work in the banking industry because there isn't anything else there to support themselves. Anyway, all of this really is conjecture. The point is that Boris Johnson doesn't seem all that enthusiastic to be Prime Minister, and the noises he's making about Brexit are, to put it mildly, lukewarm. I mean, yes, we really must have Brexit, would be a jolly good idea, and the 31st of October seems doable and might be a good time to go. It's all waffle, complete and utter waffle. Nothing about it says here's a leader who's going to lead us through and has got ideas on how to trade. Nothing at all coming from Boris on that front. He is a buffoon who seems to have been promoted far beyond his abilities and pay grade, and to be made the Prime Minister, or appointed the Prime Minister by the Tory party in this particular piece of British history, if you want to call it that, is basically he's being turned into a patsy. I think he knows it. Jeremy Hunt, if he's got any sense at all, will try desperately to lose this election as much as he can. Jeremy Hunt has to appear as foolish as possible now in order for Boris Johnson to get the foul end of the stick, shall we say, to put it mildly and politely. But to leave Boris Johnson up the river without means of propulsion, it needs to be Boris on his own, everybody else looking even worse than him. Anyway, that's the weird situation that we're in. Nicola Sturgeon was interviewed for Der Spiegel, the German newspaper, and this was put to her about the fact that surely having Boris Johnson leading the UK out of the European Union would be good for Scottish independence. And Nicola, I thought, was a little coy, but she was basically saying she didn't want anybody to have to face Brexit, and had done everything in her power to give the Tories other options for ways out of that Brexit mess, but make it a softer Brexit as possible, so as little damage as possible. To be honest with you, and I think she knows, and everybody knows, that that's not possible. Brexit is going to damage the UK no matter how soft a Brexit it is. It will damage us either badly, very badly, or fatally. One of those three. So Boris, it is poetic justice for him to be the man left carrying the can for it, carrying the blame for breaking up Britain and for leaving the European Union without any plan, leaving us wide open to being picked over by American multinational and transnational corporations. Donald Trump, I'm sure, would be delighted to be able to pick over the bones of whatever's left of the UK's social services and its care system and its health system. But Scotland is wise enough not to go down that road and not to follow England blithely off the cliff of Brexit. Anyway, coming back to the here and now in Glasgow, it's a beautiful day today, and today is the day of the annual Mela festival, which is the Indian festival of culture, which takes place and has done for the last 25 years in Glasgow. This year's going to be ever. It takes place this afternoon in Kelvingove. There are 3 live sing stages operating simultaneously today, countless food stalls and other amusements and entertainments laid on all around the park for everyone. People will be dressing up in their finest clothes as well, showcasing the best of Indian culture from Scotland and the wider world. This year I understand that most of the talent for the show, the dancing, the musicians and so on, many of the people who are coming to perform today actually come from Scotland. These are Scottish Indians who are coming to perform. There will still be some entertainment from abroad, but this year they focus much more on the homegrown talent. So if you have time and you've got nothing better to do this afternoon and you want to go and see some colour and some life, taste some fantastic Indian food and watch some spectacular entertainment, get along to Kelvingove this afternoon and enjoy yourself. I'm off to do my day job now, but have a great weekend. I'll see you all again tomorrow, when hopefully there might be some more interesting news about Boris Johnson. Maybe he's had another row with his girlfriend. Maybe she'll throw him out on the street and chuck his bags and his suitcases out after him. Who knows? Something is bound to go wrong with Boris. It's just a case of waiting until the next daft or the next major embarrassment comes along. But anyway, I'll report on that as and when it happens. Anyway, have a great day. Don't forget, get along to Kelvingove in Glasgow today to see the Mela if you have the time. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye bye for now.